The volunteering rate in Singapore has rebounded to pre-pandemic levels. Latest findings by the National Volunteer and Philanthropy Centre show that more people volunteered and donated last year compared to its last study in 2021. But the median hours spent went down and the average amount donated fell.
With full lifting of COVID restrictions, the number of people who volunteered last year rose to 30%. But the median time spent on volunteer activities went down by about a quarter. Time constraints was given as the main reason for not volunteering, especially among the youth. On giving, the latest findings showed more people gave last year, but the average amount donated fell by half to $100. However, that's similar to the median amount pre-pandemic. Fear of scams was a top factor stopping people from donating, up 9 percentage points, showing that charities must do more.
They can do more by really emphasizing their trustworthiness and to really help donors, so givers and volunteers as well, to really understand how their cause is important and how their organization is strong. On the giver side, both donors and volunteers, we need to be smart and ask questions of the charity, of the donation drive, or the volunteering activity so that we become more savvy about what is legit.
The study showed that those who donated or volunteered as children were more likely to continue doing so.
One particular observation was about the exposure to giving in the early years, in the childhood years. I think there's an opportunity to work with schools, preschools, even primary schools, to incorporate giving as part of their curriculum, to introduce them to this notion of giving, perhaps even with their parents, right, and their teachers. So I think that's a specific area that we want to pursue.
Respondents showed an increasing openness to consider different ways to contribute, such as by promoting giving on social media. Among the youths who have contributed in this way, a TikToker who raised close to $50,000 for a lower-income family where the wife was diagnosed with cancer.
I just wanted to produce content around kind acts and how people receive them to showcase the value and the connection that you can have with people if you are kind without expectation of return. And then slowly evolved to more serious topics like fundraising donations. I realized that people were very generous, both in sharing and also in giving. I was pleasantly surprised by it, right? Which shows that Singaporeans do have that kindness in them. It's just that sometimes we are a bit guarded in our society. We're a little bit gloomy. But if you put them under certain conditions, we can bring out that kindness.
Well, we have more on this study with our next guest, Ms. Ng Suk Man, who is the Director of Knowledge and Insights at the National Volunteer and Philanthropy Centre. Welcome to our show, Ms. Ng. First question to you. We find that more Singaporeans are volunteering, but what was stark is that they seem to be cutting back on the hours spent on volunteer work. How much less are they volunteering in terms of their time, and why is it so?
So during the pandemic, we saw a drop which was to be expected because of the lockdown and no one could be volunteering in person. With the lifting of restrictions, we saw more people coming back and more charities bringing back their opportunities online for people to participate in. We do see that because of different challenges like time constraints, people are spending less time volunteering. But I think the important thing to remember is they are continuing to volunteer.
Right, but why do you think that is? Busy?
Yes, so for young people, there will be different time constraints as they enter the workforce, as they think about life priorities. There are different constraints on their time.
Right, so it's mainly just busyness of life. But the other statistic that jumped out at us was the amount donated also came down by half.
Yes.
I feel that's quite significant. Is that something that you're concerned about? And give us the reasons behind that.
We don't know for sure why, but again, if you look at the different challenges out there, it is not surprising that people may be donating less, but also continuing to then spend their time giving back instead of giving money.
But don't you want to find out why they're giving less? Is it because more of the giving is online these days, and because scams have been, really coming to the forefront these days?
Possibly, but we also see a growth in different ways of giving.
Yeah.
So giving of time and money are just two ways. There are other ways like more people being able to give of their ties, mobilizing the social contacts, access to the networks. Another way is giving of testimony, where they are passionate about a cause and they share stories and advocate for them. So there are different ways that people are giving back, and not necessarily just measured by donations or volunteering hours.
That's an interesting point that I'd like to circle back to.
Sure.
But I did want to also touch before that on the study identifying some new predictors of giving behavior.
Yes.
Take us through one in particular predictor, the interest in social issues.
Yeah.
Why is that a predictor? And how has that emerged as a gauge of whether someone is more likely to give time, more likely to give more money?
Sure. So in the study, actually in all the runs of our study, what has stayed consistent as a key motivator is the intrinsic motivation. So if people believe that they are helping, they can make a difference, they will give. And with this predictor in interest in social issues, it is quite consistent. When someone's interested in a social issue, they'll tend to find out more about it. They'll read the news, they will engage in conversations to unpack the issue, and that will lead to giving back, whether it's in volunteering or donating or in any of the other ways that we just talked about.
Yeah, and that, I suppose, spurs the other ways of giving that you suggested, the social aspect, almost like a crowdfunding kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and your survey also talked about this phrase, micro-giving, micro-volunteering, and that's what you're alluding to, isn't it? Can you explain it more?
Sure. I think it's also a phenomenon of the post-pandemic situation, where we have now have gotten used to this more flexible working arrangements, right? Where there's the work from home. And with that, we're able to explore other ways of giving. So, for example, we see more and more volunteering opportunities come up in bite sizes. So whether they're in 15 or 30-minute chunks, where you're taking a break at home in between meetings or during a lunch hour, you're able to take on a piece of work, for example, translating a speech for a charity or copywriting a marketing campaign. That can be done easily, and that's volunteering. That's micro-volunteering. Micro-giving is something that we are seeing more and more of. It is, for example, giving during a purchase, where you have the opportunity to round up your purchase or to just donate your change.
Yeah, okay, I understand that. That's sort of evolving with our lifestyles, isn't it? Now, the survey also seems to, highlight some differences in giving behavior between young people and maybe our more senior citizens. What were they?
Sure. Both groups of people give in different ways.
Yeah.
So the young people, we talked about the different time constraints that they have, tend to volunteer maybe occasionally. Seniors, who tend to be retirees, have therefore more time on their hands, and they're able to commit to volunteering more regularly and for longer hours. So this is the difference. Mainly between the two groups, but we also talked about the online giving.
Yeah.
So we also see more young people taking part in the alternative ways of giving versus the seniors who tend to stick to the more traditional ways of giving.
Well, it seems like the seniors are a massive resource that can still be tapped in for volunteering.
Yes.
I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, I've been speaking there with Ms. Ng Suk Man from the National Volunteer and Philanthropy Centre.